Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. For Ilhan Omar, it's go time. Trump has just made the call. The raids are on their way, and she is panicking. She is in hysterics. And before we get into this story, please like, share, and comment at Explain America. Join us. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Now, everybody knows about the massive scandal that has rocked Minnesota, and it has come in the form of over $1 billion in fraud that was in some part directed to the Somali community in Minnesota. And as we know, Ilhan Omar would not be a congresswoman. The refugee from Somalia has had strong support from the tens of thousands of refugees that have landed in Minnesota, particularly from Somalia. And she is freaking out because Donald Trump recently said that he didn't want his term garbage from these third world countries in the United States scamming U.S. taxpayers and ripping them off for hundreds of millions of dollars and really showing their ingratitude to the United States. And who embodies and personifies this ingratitude better than Ilhan Omar? So when she got the news that ICE is on its way to raid these Somali communities, and she really flipped out. And this is what she said. Essentially, they're possibly kidnapping people, and she urged the city's enormous Somalia enclave to dial 911 if they encounter law enforcement activity they don't recognize. And this was backed up by left-wing Mayor Frey. He said if there's anything that is a violation of someone's human rights or civil rights, excessive force or anything like that, they absolutely have a duty to intervene as police officers, unquote. So imagine that, a Democrat mayor saying police should be stopping federal agents from enforcing immigration law. I mean, it's just insane how these Democrats can harbor illegal aliens and get away with it. They're committing crimes under U.S. statute. But unfortunately, not a single one of them has been arrested yet for standing in the way of law enforcement, obstructing their operations, harboring illegal aliens. Nothing. Nobody. Not in Boston, not in California, not in Portland, not in Seattle, not in Chicago. Nobody. So why should they care about the law? Well, it's obvious that they don't. So Mayor Frey of Minneapolis joined the chorus of condemnation against what local officials framed as a federal crackdown, and saying that the city police forbids MPD cooperation with ICE on civil immigration enforcement. Of course, because they want illegal aliens in this country. They support the Democratic Party in large part. There is some questionable election practices that revolve around these inflated numbers of residents who are not American citizens, and there are investigations that are ongoing from the Department of Homeland Security and other agencies that are looking into blue states, such as in Maryland. So he better watch his P's and Q's, because I think that there could be some grounds for looking into an indictment against any of these lawmakers that continue to aid and abet criminal wrongdoing in the United States. So these raids in the Somali communities in Minnesota are ongoing. Post-millennials Katie Davis Court captured some of this, and let's take a look.
Got a camera you have a second. Right, don't move.
She ran inside.
So according to what Davis Court said, sources tell me the targets were apprehended on a warrant, and a male subject allegedly assaulted officers but was successfully apprehended. That only goes to prove our point. Now, there are also potentially collateral arrests per her sources. So Democratic Minnesota Rep. Ilhan Omar appeared to suggest on Sunday that these Somali residents who are caught up in this massive COVID relief fraud scheme, they're actually the victims in all of this. Well, let's take a look.
So this was, just for our audience, the Biden-era Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. And this was pocketing COVID-era welfare funds, more than $1 billion in taxpayer money that was stolen. It was pretty shocking. Of the 87 people charged, all but 8 are of Somali descent. And that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on your community. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread?
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also, as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
So, Omar, you are really playing the part on Disgrace the Nation of playing a victim. Once again, the real victims are the American people, are the taxpayers that were ripped off. And contrary to what Dr. Oz at Health and Human Services has to say about potentially freezing Medicare funding if this corruption is not stopped, you should actually have to pay this back to the American people. You should have to bring it back into our treasury and give us a refund, because the nearly $1 trillion in COVID relief scams, all said and done, that comes out of our pocket. We were robbed, and the Democratic Party held the gun through the IRS. And by inflating our currency to where it's massive inflation, hurting the poor people in the middle class of this country. So, no, it shouldn't just stop at an investigation. It shouldn't just stop at cutting off funding. We want a refund. So, Ilhan Omar and all of these illegal aliens or refugees who have engaged in fraud, they should be held accountable, and that means truly accountable. Justice is not just stopping the bad behavior, it's also punishing it and getting recompense for the true victims, not these Somali refugees, but the American taxpayers. So to continue, even the Biden-era Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country, and they pocketed COVID-era welfare funds. More than $1 billion in taxpayer money was stolen. And that's what Margaret Brennan told her. And she adds, of the 87 people charged, all but 8 are of Somali descent, and that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on her community. And she asked, why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread? And so, again, when Omar is asked a direct question and she cannot claim that it's racism or discrimination or Trump getting vengeance, she just tries to play the victim. And this is a familiar scam. But Ilhan Omar has some major questions to answer herself because of financial disclosures from this year that show an exponential increase in the net worth of her and her husband Tim Minette, and their net worth increased almost 3,500% last year, up to $30 million. So Omar's 2024 report shows that her husband's California-based winery at E. St. Croix LLC and Washington, D.C.-based venture firm Rosalie Capital were valued between $6 and $30 million. But in her 2023 report, she said their combined stake was worth only $51,000. So somewhere she made a lot of money, and would be nice to get a 3,500% increase in net worth in 1 year. I think it raises some red flags. I think Ilhan Omar, well, if she isn't deported, maybe she should be criminally charged. Just my thoughts. Weigh in with your own. We always appreciate hearing from you at Explain America.